Okay, devils, how we doing today? Sam here with you. It's the 18th of September. Of course, we're looking at crypto today. Now, I was really glad to see this. Right? So, by far and away, the winner of our poll today was Ethereum to the dollar. So I've got this is Ethereum to the dollar on Bitstamp. Now, I'm gonna push this over here for a minute. Now, I've been very bearish of alts, right? Just waiting for something to happen. And is often the case within, God damn it, 3 days of my saying that, we start to get some sparks, right? Some signs of some life here in the alt space. So what you'll hear me suggest that you guys do this, as I will often do. If you're looking at it and you just, sometimes you get so dialed into what you've seen in the past, every time you looked at the chart, right? You get dialed into that, and it becomes hard to look beyond that because you start to see it consistently. So what I will often do is just strip the chart bare and just start from scratch, right? As though you were looking at it from the very first time, and just being mindful of the fact of the prior assumptions that have been made. But in doing that, if you really work through it, measure each swing, say, can this work? Does this work? Is there an alternate here? Often you can find yourself coming up with some alternates that might change your thinking. And I think that's what we have here. And I think that's what I've gone through here. And now looking at this, now somewhat contingent on how we evolve here. As I said in my comments, right, it's too soon to tell whether or not these are just relief rallies, bull traps, or it's too soon to tell. But there's a case to be made for something substantial happening here, and potentially now the start of, well, I don't know if we're going to call it alt season, right? So, but certainly it would start with something like Ethereum. So let's just go back through this here. Now, the first question you have to ponder, right? Let's say it that way. Are you going to look at this arithmetic or log? Right, so if you're going by the, if you're going to use your Elliott Wave toolkit here to analyze here, well, with a low of 80 and a high of 360 here, well, we certainly are 3x the range. So I would look at it in both here, because we're not, it's not like looking at Amazon or the S&P where it's so, it's 20, 30x the range. I'd look at both here. Now, so because of that, so I will start well, because we're at almost 4x the range here, I'm going to go to log scale. Now, you got to work through this count, and we've been through it a couple of times, and it's open to some interpretation, but the count that I have it here is based on the idea that we completed an impulse here. So you have to do a little fancy footwork in here a little bit, right? There's a few spots that are questionable, right? We've repeatedly come back to this and said, is this an expanded flat? Right, certainly, it potentially could be interpreted that way, but also you can see the little impulse here. There's a way to interpret this, to have this be our larger 3 pivot here. Then we can get an A, B, C into the 4 here, and the whole thing is just cleaner. It feels like it's connected. So this open to interpretation. Is this the one? Is this the one? Again, expanded flat. Doesn't really matter at this point in time, but this seems to be the most probable impulse off of the low, right? It gets a little dicey in here because of some of these. It looks like, you could interpret it a couple of different ways, but if we make the assumption that we completed a swing here, right, and given the depth of the retracement, that's not an unreasonable assumption to make. Then now you come back here, now you're working through the correction, saying, okay, well, if that's a completed impulse off of the low, can I interpret this in a way that would have me finishing here? So again, now it's going to be different, arithmetic to log, but if we stay in log here, come right to the 50. So if we're thinking here, right, on the assumption perhaps we've got something starting here, that we could look at this way. We could go to something big here, and of course, we'll change those. And oh shit, hang on a second. Let's put that in. We'll go something big. You can see it here. So the idea is here that we've got a completed impulse. Now, this is where it's gotten dicier. So it's been very easy, and here, perhaps this to my detriment, right? It's been very easy to just look at this and go 3, 4, 5. It's 5 down, so the expectation is 3 before we go down again. And that still certainly is a contender count that could be underway. But if you really, really dig here, there's an alternate way to count this that would have us completing the 2 here, and that's certainly, again, in arithmetic, or pardon me, in logarithmic, it would make sense. So we just have the 1, the 2 is complete, and now we're just in the beginning phases of the 3rd. So if we are going to get some sort of an alt season here to begin going into the 4th quarter of the year, well, I think you could make a case for it here. Now, we can't confirm it. Really, we got to get this motive wave to confirm. We got to get a 3 down, and then we got to get another one, right? That will break all the algo resistance that'll be there fighting. The bulls will have to fight through for this to actually start to go, and at least break this high. All right, if we're really going to go, that'll be an easy one. So let's just work through this really quickly. So you can see just here in log, we're right at the zone where you might anticipate it, right? So 50 here. This structure is very interesting how this structure had held it, right? So we get this nice little pocket in here, right? You can see all of, right, note here, right? All of this volume here where we have market acceptance, right? And just carry it across, right? Reasonable spot to find support here where we now, if it were to break, next one here, point of control would be the next logical spot you might expect to find some support. But with that little assumption factored in here, let's get this out of here. Well, we got to break into what's happened coming down. So let me just reset this here. So here's the opportunity to interpret this differently here, and it's relative to what we're doing here. So if this is 1, 2, I can make a case here for the 3, 4, and the 5 to finish here. Now it's not ideal, right? I mean, certainly you'd want to see more complexity in that 5, but I can make a case for a double bottom here to complete an impulse off of the top, right? I see it, guys. I know it's not ideal, but I can make a case here for that being a completed impulse. Well, the correction here is this that one's not too hard, right? We get that nice 3 there. So the question is, can we interpret this as a B? Well, it's just right. Wouldn't again going to be different in log, right? So if we stay in log here, the retrace here, we're coming up. We hit the structure here from this prior. Looks like that prior pivot had some influence here. We come right up to approximately the 38, right? So it's you're looking for the B in the 50, the 618, 786, but to have a shallow B, right, doesn't invalidate the count, but of course, note what happens here. We go right. I mean, that's to the tick, right? So interesting, right? So you don't know, right, what the algos have done. We're always trying to interpret. Could have been a low to a low, something like that. Right? Hard to know what they use. There it is. If we use the first little pivot low, right? Again, this is. As I always like to give him credit here, David Halsey's approach, because the first time I saw that, with the idea being that when the algos can't get it, right, so I've always done it this way, that if they can't get what they're looking for, they'll go low to low or high to high. And here we get a perfect tag of the 50 and comfortably clears that algo target. So if we're going to allow for the shallow B here, which again doesn't invalidate, it's not like it's never happened before, then we can finish. Looks like we get a triangle here in the 4. Then we can finish the ABC down here, and we've got. You can make a case for that being a technical pivot. So let me get this out of here. All right. So if that's the case, and we can interpret this as an ABC to potentially be putting in the 2. Right now, again, it's going to require that this completes this impulse here. So it's not quite time to break out the bullhorn, but we've got encouraging signs of life here. So let's look in here. It's a little tricky down here, no doubt about it. All right, so you've got a very funky start to this with this very deep 2, and so the 1 here, we can get the 1, the ABC and the 2 is clear, but now we got to go 3, 4, 5. So it's you're looking at that symmetry, big extension in the 1, very deep 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, again, is it gorgeous? No, but is it valid? Yeah, you can make a case that there's an oddly shaped diagonal that's gone in there. You certainly wouldn't dial that up as a textbook case for a leading diagonal, but I can. I'll go with it for the time being. Here it looks like you got to go ABC, right? So Again, it's not perfect, but it's there. So there's the ABC into the 2. Right, I can live with that. And then from the, well, pardon me, if I get from my start here through the 1. Right, now here we're looking for the 2 between the 50 and the 618. That's just fine. Looks good there. You got to be a little creative here in your interpretation here, but then coming off of that, I can get a clear impulse that looks like it may have completed here, and then we start measuring. Right? So it's always, okay, if that's 1, 2, and I can see the impulse here, well, how am I looking just in terms of swing relationships that we might anticipate in an Elliott count? Well, here's where we got the 618, damn near, I think it's a tick off, right? Assuming I'm dialed right in there. Oh, I think we got it to the tick. So, right, you got to be a little creative here. 1, 2, right to my high probability zone for a 3. So I'm comfortable planting the flag of the 3rd right there. Now, if we kick higher, right, we may have to change that. But at this moment in time, as we stall here, looks like that's potentially setting up the retrace into the 4, right? So the idea being the people that caught this move, right, they'll start thinking about, oh, maybe, right, and that will be the next opportunity. So if we do start to come down here, and again, we're not far enough away from that pivot to where I'd be planting that flag of that 3rd in cement, right? So we just not, right? It's a strong contender given that swing relationship. So we'd want to see this start to come down here and look for some typical targets. So just standard stuff here, just length of the 3rd. Well, we can see here's some volume profile here. So anywhere between 23 and 38 would be ideal. So maybe if this is going to pause and take its time, the Vegas wave might come up here and give us that little bit of support here. We've got our wave 1 wicked off here just right at the 65. Kind of interesting. So this is going to need to soften a little bit to give us the 4. But I would tell you there's absolutely, if we get that, now if we get that, there's definitely a trade there. I wouldn't shy away from that at all. All right, so might have some structure come into play here. So just looking left, looking at the key pivots, I'd keep an eye on that. You can see the divot here in the volume profile as we had no market acceptance there. So if we were going to come down here, I'd be paying attention. We got right there. All right, I mean, there's not much else, right? So you look and you wonder, okay, let's pull back just a little bit. All right, so question, why are we stalling here? Well, you can see certainly there's plenty of market acceptance here. Let's reset back here and see if we can find a pivot that might be influencing this in terms of why are we stopping here. So first one we'd want to look at, of course, is just how do we do here, right? We looked at that one. So pulling back here to this low, well, we're not to the 50 yet. So are they using a secondary pivot here? Why are we stopping here? Could be. Hard to know, right? We're never really going to know. Just looking low to low, maybe high, pulling from the high. That looks too small. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. So if they were going to use anything, it looks like it might be this. But it's a little bit unclear. So it makes me think there's definitely potential here if we're going to soften a little bit here to come back and then look where that algo target would put us. Right at that 50. Now you'd have a pretty solid case, and then you just start drawing up some. A channel would be a reasonable thing to start with here. We're going to get something along this, like this. Now we're not there. So, you got to kind of lay it out here. Nothing says we can't go higher here and that we must retrace at this point. But we're certainly at a spot where you might anticipate if it does start to come down. I think there's a very valid case to be made for if you can get anything between the 23 and the 38, that you'd be looking for a decent little trade there. Now, that's not your home run ball, and I wouldn't be forecasting it that we're going that high, right? We got to get through all of this resistance. But you can be a buyer here. That's 200 with a target up here of 227. Well, there's a little swing trade, right? Nice little single. You don't need to lever it up like crazy. It doesn't have the characteristic, certainly it could be, but it doesn't quite look like we're doing A, B, C. Now, could it be? Of course, right? Could be. But if this impulse finishes here, this is going to start to get harder and harder to interpret as an ABC, at least in this leg. So that would leave the possibility here that we're doing an ABC, which is sort of what the assumption has been if you were counting that as 5 down. right? If we were counting all of this as a 5. But here, if we interpret this as an ABC, which is, again, all right, it's not gorgeous, but it's not invalid, we could come through this and hit this here and have our 1 wave off of the low, right? So we'd have just what we've been waiting all this time to get signs of a motive wave coming off of a significant low here. So could we be in the midst of this? Well, first thing, one thing at a time, right? First, we got to complete the 1 wave here. And ideally, you complete the impulse. That would be ideal, right? So we don't go to, you'd really, given the clear impulse here, you really would not be anticipating anything other than an impulse, right? I think it's a little tougher to come back here and count this as an ABC, thinking some sort of diagonal. So right now, I would tell you that this is a critical move here in terms of how we finish. Because Ethereum looks exactly like total 2, right? So if we can reinterpret total 2 as an ABC that's gone in, and Ethereum is going to lead us into alt season, well, this is going to be a biggie, right? We need this to resolve here so that we can be positioned to set this up, right? That's the one we're waiting for. So you often hear me say, don't force anything here. You're not going to miss the big run. You won't, right? Now, if you don't, right? If we get this, we got to pay attention here, but we're not there yet. So let's not make any assumptions other than we've got a candidate. We got a technical low. You've got a price pattern here. You've got an Elliott count that, while it's not gorgeous, it fits. You can work with it, right? So all of this, right? So if this completes, then this starts to solidify. If this breaks down, then you're back here going, oh fuck, man, maybe it is just a 5, and this is overly optimistic to try and work this into an A wave, right? We can't ignore that possibility just because we want this to go. But if this does complete here, I think this is the buy we've been waiting for. I personally will probably not chase that. But this, yeah, that I'd be aggressive there. This, let it complete here, and that's individual trader's choice, right? For you guys that like the short term crypto trading in there, I don't do a lot of that. But here, I sure as hell I'm gonna have a stop on it, but I'd be buying aggressively there, and I would probably look to ladder in, right? The same thing. So that's one to be watching and waiting for. Now, just eyeballing it here, that could put us, that could be a month out easily, right? I'm just hear me free drawing it. That puts us at October 19th, right? Exactly a month out. So, let's not get overly bullish yet. All right, market's got to prove it. Right, and then of course, if we do bump into this 50. Right now, whether or not we can get through or not, we know there's going to be a little bit of selling resistance there. Even just here, look at the volume profile, right? So here would be one standard deviation. Here's lots of market acceptance, right? So to get through that would be kind of surprising, right? So then you got a big divot up here where the 618 is, right? So you're going to have resistance here, right? From that dominant to dominant, you get to a golden zone. There's going to be selling pressure here, but of course, right? One of them has to break eventually. So if we're up here and maybe we get an extension of the 5, right? So you don't necessarily, here's what I would not be doing as well. I would not be shorting it there. And that's me. I don't like to short crypto. But so here, right, I'll just wait. I'm sure as hell watching. But I want to see that complete, and I want to see a 3 come down here. If I get that, yeah, well, it's been a long wait. Right? If we get it, right? We're not there yet. All right, so let's be watching here. You don't need to jump on this. Don't let any FOMO. FOMO works against you. Just let the market, right? You don't need to be in a hurry here. If this is really the start of alt season, then we are just in the one of the one. All right, a little fuel for thought, guys. All right, talk to you in a bit.